look at 99.95% of the solos that have been recorded in the last 80 years, chances are they have at least one element of the blues in them. If not just one element, they are totally just blues solos. So the way that I like to teach my students how to start a solo is by studying the blues, studying its history, studying the important players, and then finally learning how to understand its form, its style, being able to play bass, chords, and then learning how to solo authentically using the language of all the players that have come before us. So let's dive deep into the blues. The first thing I like to do is I have my students do a scavenger hunt. I have them find a song that they like that has a guitar solo in it. And I'll ask everyone to write down a guitar solo. We'll listen to all of them together. And what I'm listening for is I'm listening for elements of blues style. So what that means is I want to hear some bending. That's blues style. If I hear double stops, playing two notes at a time. Or if I hear like some hammer-ons and pull-offs, or just like crazy vibrato. All those are blues style elements, and I give them a name. I call it X. So when we're listening to it, I'll be like, oh, that's got X in it. Oh, I hear some X in there. And they don't know what I'm talking about. And when we get through all of these different songs, everyone has a little bit of X in it. Some are just, I'm like, oh man, that's got so much X. They're like, what is that? And then I'll break it down. I'll be like, okay, kids, what we're listening to is blues and elements of blues style. And they're like, what's that? And I was like, well, let's define X based on what we listen to. And then I'll play one of the solos and I'll be like, what do you hear there? And they're able to identify those things: bending, double stops, vibrato. They might not know what it's called, but it's in there, and then they can hear it and they can identify it. And if they can identify it in the recordings of music that they listen to, they can identify it when they go to play or when they hear some actual blues artists. That's the first thing I do, is I get them just oriented towards listening for those blues style elements. And then after that, after the big reveal of what X is, then we get into what the history of the blues is. And what I like to do is I have a history that I got here. This is, I just read this verbatim because if we're talking about the blues, we have to talk about, some uncomfortable topics. We have to tie into American history, and we have to tie into where blues came from, and we have to do it with reverence and with respect. So we talk about that it came from the slave trade and field songs and where this music comes from. And it didn't start on guitar. It came from mostly just vocal. And then we start to listen. Now, I don't listen. I have a few listening lists, but I don't start listening from the earliest recordings. If we listen to really early recordings from the 30s, some students think it just sounds hokey. So we'll listen to some more like modern blues masters. We'll listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan and B.B. King. I think those are really two voices that students are going to be able to pick out, because my goal is that I want students to be able to hear a solo and go, oh man, that either is T-Bone Walker or someone's trying to sound like T-Bone Walker. If they can do that when they go to solo, they're going to have a whole lot of style and feel, or at least an ear for it. So we start listening for between B.B. King and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I don't tell them who is who yet, and I have them just, write down the differences. There are some similarities. They're both using vibrato, but B.B. King has more of like a cleaner sound, and he has more of like a warm, rounder sound. And Stevie Ray Vaughan is super distorted, and he's playing with a lot of pick attack. I would definitely listen to The Thrill Is Gone by B.B. King. I would listen to Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan, and just go back and forth between the two, and then do a reveal. This is B.B. King, this is Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then drop the needle. Play a bit of one of their solos and see if students can identify between the two. If you start with two, then you can add more and more, and eventually students will be able to identify, okay, that's Muddy Waters, that's B.B. King, that's Josh Smith. After we do some of that listening, it's important then to start listening to the very early recordings. I like listening to Blind Lemon Jefferson. I like listening to Robert Johnson. We listen to Sweet Home Chicago by Robert Johnson. We also do the Crossroads Blues, and I tell them the little myth about Robert Johnson, where the myth is for him to get so good at guitar, he sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads, and that's what the Crossroads Blues is about. And if you listen to Blind Lemon Jefferson, he's using a lot of slide on the guitar, and I don't have a slide with me, but I'm going to use just this little piece of audio adapter. And if I go to play a note, and if I play it with this slide, I can make it like mimic the whale sound of a voice, and that's what those early players were doing, was they were using slide, and how that has developed in some of the blues language that we hear even in a Metallica solo or something. So we go through, we listen to some of those early recordings, and we start to get a sense of where it came from. Like there are some licks that you hear that Robert Johnson plays that you might have heard B.B. King plays. And then we start to fill in the blanks. We listen to T-Bone Walker, and then there's some licks that T-Bone plays that Stevie Ray Vaughan plays. And the idea is to get them listening for the lineage of the language, because when they start learning the language, they're part of that lineage. Even if they're a beginning player, when they start learning what Robert Johnson played, and maybe they tweak it a little bit, that's their own, and that's part of telling the story with the blues language. So the next step then is, after we've gone through blues, the blues style, now we get into blues form. And there's two separate things here. The blues style is all that bending, it's sliding, it's hammer-ons and pull-offs, it's the sound. But blues form is a totally different thing. It's unique. So what I do is I have students listen to a backing track, and I can give you a copy of this backing track. And the first thing I have them do is I just have them clap where they hear the big change. I talk about how the form of a song is similar to the form of one we're writing. And we have words, we have sentences, and we have paragraphs. And I want them to clap when they feel like the paragraph ends and a new paragraph begins. And just tell them it's not going to be a short thing, it's a longer thing. Listen to the end of the paragraph. So we'll listen to it right now, and what I want you to do is listen, and then you feel like when it ends, they're going to clap. I don't just give them the form. I like them to figure it out first through critical listening. So here we go. Listening for the words, the sentences, like there's the end of a sentence. Another sentence. And then in the classroom, no joke, every class I've ever taught, all the students do that. And that's full phrase. And then I play it again, and I have them count how many groups of four there are. And I have them go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And they eventually find that there are 12 bars in this one paragraph. And then I have them see how many sentences there are inside the paragraph. And there are 3 sentences. And then I can show them that the blues form is formatted like this. So here is the blues form. We have 4 sets of 3. This is our paragraph, and these are our sentences. And then we listen to it, and I tell them that, there are these numbers here. I don't show them to it right away, but eventually I take a whole day on form, and they figure out where the numbers go. And again, that just helps them make those connections. But if you don't have enough time, you could just show this to them. I definitely would have them figure out where the paragraph is first, because the first thing that goes away when they start jamming is they lose the form. So here is the form. This is a traditional 1-4-5 blues. There's lots of different alterations here, and I haven't added the 7. You'll notice if you've ever looked at blues before, we have the 7 here. I'm not adding it because that just adds complexity. I always show my students the blues when we learn it in the key of A. So here's A, And then I have them just find, okay, what's the 1? The 1 is A, the 4 is D, and the 5 is E. So then they can write it out in notes if they want. And then what we do is we listen to the blues, and this time we are going to say those numbers. So let's listen to the backing track, and then we're going to say those numbers. I'm going to press play. 1, 4, 1. Now I'm going to stop, and I just want you to keep track of where we are. Hear this big change here? Another thing I do is sometimes I'll be listening to that and I'll pause it and I'll point to a student and I'll say, okay, what measure were we on and what beat were we on? And that's just a whole new level of critical listening. Not only do they have to be thinking about the numbers, but like I'll stop it at beat 3 of measure 5. I'll say like, oh, what number chord is it? Okay, it's the 4 chord. It was the 5th measure and we were on beat 3. Now that's a lot of listening, it's a lot of focus, but anything you can do to get your students feeling the form is going to help so much later when they get to play it. So the first thing that I do to get them to play is I have them play really simple chords. So the first step is to just identify the notes on the E string and the A string for E, A, and D. These are our 1, 4, and 5. So the 1 is A, and I play this in the 5th fret of the low E string. And then I do the 4 as D on the 5th fret of the A string. And then the 5 is E, and you can play that either on the 7th fret of the A string, or you can play it on the low E string by itself. And you could just call out different numbers and have students play it. Okay, play 1, play 5, play the low 5. You can have students do like races. You can call out a number. You can have them turn and share and have them quiz each other. You just want them to get really good at finding where those numbers are. And then it's time to apply it to a backing track. I don't like to show them the numbers after they've learned this stuff because I want them to be internalizing and thinking about it abstractly. But if you need to show them the chart with the numbers, you can, especially on this first run through. But what I do is I have them just play the roots of the chord. We talk about the different tiers of chord playing, and this is like the lowest tier. This is like a F tier. No one's ever going to, at a jam, actually play these notes, but it prepares them to be able to play all the other stuff. So I'm going to play it through, and you can play it with me. We have 1, 4, and 5. We have our A, D, and E, and I'm going to get my backing track up here, and you get all prepared. I'll go over here, and we're going to start with the 1, and we're just going to play it as one note. A is the 1. Now go up to the 4, and I'm going to play with my index finger, 1. And you can re-attack at the beginning of every chord. And we go 4, 4 again, and 1. 1. Get ready with 5. We got to think about where that is before we get there. 5, then we have 4, and back to 1. And let's play our low 5 here. Open E. Okay, so that was the first round go through, and that was our like F tier. No one's ever gonna play that, but it prepares us for the next step. The next step is our D tier. And now I'm gonna have them take those same notes, but now they're gonna play power chords. So to play a power chord, you have your target note, which is play with your index finger. And then you're gonna go 1 string up and 2 frets over. And I like to use my 3rd finger there. Some students do this, some students do this, whatever is comfortable, but you need to be able to play these 2 notes comfortably. So I have my target note, that's the note I'm looking for the root. And then you could just have them move this shape around. You could tell them a fret to go on. Okay, play a power chord with the root on the low E string on the 8th fret. Okay, it's right there. How about the 3rd fret? You want it to be comfortable for them to move around. And then you want them to be able to play their 1, 4, and 5 with their power chord. So here is my A power chord, root's right there. I'm gonna go to D, root now goes to the A string. Have them try not to play. You don't want this. I don't know about you, but I'm not too fond of that sound. So really try to have them only play those notes. They can mute with their index finger. They could just not play it with their strumming hand. And they can play E here. They can also play E all the way down here. But then the next step is to play through the backing, except now they're using those power chords. So let's do that. Let's play our backing with just power chords. We're just playing the harmonic rhythm. This is like our D tier. Now our 4 chord and our 1 chord. Play the 1 chord again. 4 chord. 4 chord and the 1 chord. 1 chord. Move up to the 5. Down to the 4. Now we're gonna go to our C tier. You're gonna shuffle. We're gonna do a shuffle rhythm here. So the way that shuffle rhythm is gonna work is I'm going to palm mute a little bit. So I'm putting my palm here. And the way to show palm muting to students is to have them overdo it. I'm putting my fingers way on top of the strings and then picking, and we'll get dead sounds. We don't want that. So I have them back it up until you hear more of the tonal, and then back it up more until it's just the open strings. So find a spot where you're muting the strings, but you're also hearing the tonal. And then get them on that 5th fret A, and you want them to do this. And look at my fretting hand. I am lifting it up to mute those notes. You could have students do this too. But this is like, you could play this on the gig, right? So that would be my next move, is to get them to play through the whole form by doing that rhythm. 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. Next step then is to add in the 6. So if here's our power chord shape, we have our root, we have our 5, 5, 5.5, and 6, right? And that's a good sound. That's a sound that anyone can use. And that's about as far as I get with my students on playing chords. Let's try it through the backing track. 2, 3, 4. If you can't add the 6, go back to just playing the power chords, but play them with that shuffle rhythm. Just try to get it in time. Up to the 5. And that might be really hard for some students, but you can totally scaffold this where you can have some students playing the, our F tier where they're just playing the roots. Some students are playing the power chords on only the change, the harmonic rhythm. And some students are playing the shuffle, and then some students add in the 6. And then after that, I want them to be able to play bass. And the cool thing is they already know how to play the most basic level of bass, which is just playing the roots. So we can play just the roots of the chord on the change. And I like to have them, even if you have bass in the room, I have everyone learn this on the guitar. They're just playing all 4 beats. And the goal is to make this as in time as possible, right? You're almost a drummer. And then play that along with the backing track. And then the last bass line that I show them, there's a lot of different ones, and I'll share a page that has a lot of these bass lines on there, but it's this bass line. Okay, so to play that, on beat 1 you play the root of the chord, and then on beat 2 you shift the whole thing up 2 frets. Right, so get them used to playing this and then shifting up 2. I like to do this in little baby steps, shift it up 2. Then with your 3rd finger, you're playing the 6. If you remember this, you're doing the same thing, but now you're playing the 6 with your 3rd finger. So if I'm doing this over the A chord, that is F sharp on the 9th fret. And then you go down to playing the 5, and this would be E on the 7th fret, and then back up to F sharp on the 9th fret. So shift up, 3rd finger, 1st finger, 3rd finger, and get them just to rock this out for a while. Because if they can play this, then they can move it around. But if they can't play this, they can't move it around. They're not going to have fun. It's all about having fun building these skills. So get that going. They could add in the slide if they want. They can make it all short if they want. They can make it smooth and connected. The style more calls for the smooth and connected approach. So now let's play it all the way through with the changes. We're using this D, A, then D, D, and A. And here's our E, and D, and A, and E again. All right, so now they can play chords and they can play bass. It's time to jam. You could put students into small groups. You can have 2 of them play chords, you can have 2 of them play bass. They can listen to each other for time, or you can have them use that backing track, or I have just the drums and they can play with the drums. And you want them to feel comfortable feeling the form and knowing that it's okay to make a mistake, but you can't stop. Don't stop and restart. Even if you have to stop and reset your fingers, stop, figure out where you are in the form, reset your fingers, and hop right back in. That's why it's helpful to have 2 people playing each part. You can kind of rely on each other, and they can go nice and slow and make sure they get through the whole thing. But now we get to our cool part. The cool part is when we get to play solos. So there have been, and you might have seen in the past, something that looks like this. This is the blues scale. And these are notes that do occur inside of blues language, but they're just notes. They're just letters. And it takes a trained ear to put these letters together to make words. And then it takes even more experience to put the words together to make sentences. And the purpose of a solo is to tell a story. And if you're learning a new language for the first time, don't just open up a dictionary and try to sound the words out yourself. What you do is you copy other people saying words. You copy their phrases. You learn those phrases by ear. And that's the same way that you should learn and acquire the language for any different musical style when you're going to solo. So the way that I have students learn is I have a few videos and I have a lick library. I have them listen to the solo and they do a call and repeat. It's not a call and respond, it's a call and repeat. So the call and repeat is I am slowly adding new notes and new sounds, and I want them to repeat it, but I want them to repeat it with as much style as possible. It's as if you're learning a new language, you learn the accents, right? You learn how to say the words as if you're a native speaker in that language. You don't just use your language's accent and put it on top of theirs. So I am going to start playing, and I'm going to start playing at the 5th fret, and we're going to start with the high E string, 5th fret, that's A, all right? And I'm going to play some notes. I'm going to play it and I want you to repeat it. And I have a few videos like this, and this is how I have my students start to learn the language. Now, if any of these are too hard, then pause the video, go back, find ones you like, and then try to learn those. And that's exactly how you learn language, and that's exactly how you're going to learn how to solo later. So here we go. Do some call and repeat. Try to make it sound like mine. I'm in that 5th fret. Let's do it again. Your turn. Here's a new note. It's your pinky on the 8th fret. Your turn. You can say a whole heck of a lot with not a lot of notes. And now let's do this one. Here's our new note. It is the 7th fret of the B string. It's an F sharp. Let's do that again. Okay, now we're going to do that note and resolve it up to this A. We'll add in our E up, our C up there. And here's a new note. It's E, 5th fret of the B string. Your turn. And now, okay, now I'm just going to use those 4 notes. Nice. Here's a new one. It's G on the B string with your pinky. Your turn. I'm just going G, F sharp, E, or 8, 7, 5. listen to the difference. The difference in that second note was a G or an F sharp. That was the F sharp, here's the G. Totally different. All right, now we're gonna take our index finger, we're gonna borrow these two. Can you do that? On the high E and the B string. You can do that with a little more aggression, hit both of them at the same time. You can do it a bunch of times. You can use that and the C. All right, here's a new one. I'm gonna do C down here on the third string. Ooh, that's a note. Ready? And let's do this one. 7th fret of the 4th string. This is an A. Same thing as this. Just has a totally different feel down here. Okay, here's a harder one. I'm gonna slide up to this 9th fret. And then I'm playing the 8th fret on the B string. Okay, let's have some fun with those notes. Yeah, it's hard there. I got some slides. For this one. All right. And so again, like you're not going to be able to play all those right away. And even if you're able to copy them, you want them to get into your playing. So what I recommend students do is to listen to it, to be able to sing it back in their ear, find one they like, listen to it, and then be able to play it 4 times without the recording. And what I don't want them to do is just to start the recording all the way at the beginning all the time, because they're only gonna learn the first one. You'll have a bunch of students just playing. And I've definitely heard that. So once they have some language by using that call and repeat, you can also have them use this lick library. The way it works is you click on any of these, and then you have that, and you can click there, and I'll play the lick at 2 tempos, and then I'll kind of break down the lick. And that's really helpful to learn those. But when they go to play a solo, if we're talking about it being related to a story, they have to figure out the narrative. They have to figure out how the story is going to go. If you're making up a story for the first time, and it's your first time doing it, it's going to be all over the place, especially if you're new to the language. So what can you do to help? You can write it down. All these licks, you can give them names, you can give them numbers, you can give them timestamp numbers if it's the call and repeat thing. All right, so then you can get something like this out, and you can plan what licks you're gonna play where. And it is okay to repeat licks. So maybe you start by doing the double stop lick. Maybe you start there, and you do it, and then you do it again. And that's cool. A lot of people repeat licks. That's how we get the sounds in our ears, is through repetition. So you can have them do that. Then they can figure, okay, I'm gonna do this Stevie Ray Vaughan lick here. Or then I am going to do this just the high, that thing, my 8 to 5. They can put it there. So they're figuring it all out. And what I have them do is I have them try to figure out which lick has the most energy in it. And then I have them put it, about 2/3 through their solo. So they're working up to it, and then they play that lick with the most energy, and they work back down from it. And if you listen to a lot of recordings of solos, that's what happens. You have a lot of energy about 2/3 into the solo. Just like in a movie or in a book, you have the climax about 2/3 in. Same thing with your solo. So they figure it out, and then it's time to practice it. You want them to practice it so that when they go to play it, it doesn't sound like they're playing something that they wrote down. Just like when you go to read a book, you don't want to make it sound like the cat and the hat. You want to practice that line until it's easy to say. And then you want to practice the next line until both those sentences go together. And you want to practice all those sentences and phrases until they can become full ideas and paragraphs. Because what you want to do is you want to take your solo, which is your story, and you want to relate that to the listener. You want them to feel what you feel, because that's what the blues is all about. It's about telling a story. And now that you have students that can play bass, you have students that can play chords, and you have students that can play solos, you could do the best thing ever, which is you can have them jam. So I have them get into a group of 3, and then each one plays those roles. It's good to start by everyone playing the same role at the same time. Let's all just play bass together. Let's all just play chords. Let's all just solo at the same time. Let's listen to each other's solos. And then have them play all together. So one student is playing bass, one student is playing chords, one student solos. Play through one chorus. Take a break, talk about it, what needs to improve, and then switch. And eventually you get to a point where they can switch without losing musical time. And you can have them play with the drum part of the backing track. That's on the page that I'm going to share as well. You'll just have the drums. You can have them play it. You can have them switch. And what they're doing, they're learning how to play to a form. They're learning language that they can play in any musical style. They're learning how to use their pick to get a good sound. They're learning how to use vibrato. They're learning all these skills that are going to transcend and translate to different types of solos. And they're having fun learning one of the most important American song forms that we have, one of the most important American styles that we have, especially on guitar, the blues. So do yourself a favor, dig deep into the blues, find some artists that you like, and start playing along. Be able to play bass, be able to play chords, be able to solo. Come to your students with some of that understanding, share your journey, and have fun sounding good.